Thank you. Good morning. Salam alaikum. It's an absolute honour and privilege to actually come and speak to you today. I have about 15 minutes to try and educate you with a couple of things, scare you probably with a couple of things, and put the whole thing into context, because there's a little bit of a sort of stigma around what is the Fourth Industrial Revolution, and I'll try and bring that to bear. So we're living in an inflection point in history where the Fourth Industrial Revolution will be game-changing. It will affect every part of our lives. There will be nowhere to hide from it. We are actually cresting the last end of the Third Industrial Revolution, and where we're starting to hear things like Industry 4.0, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But the Fourth Industrial Revolution is much, much more. It's about the fusion between the physical, the digital, and the biological, or if you like, the physical being people and the things around them. The digital, obviously, is the mathematics, and the biological is the biology and science around it. But this is totally game-changing the way it's going to affect our world. Just make sure I've got my technology right. So, since 2003, IBM have actually been conducting a C-suite study where we go out and interview CXOs around what are the changes, what are the things that are happening, how are you actually going to deal with change, are you ready for change? But there's a little misconstrued point about Industry 4.0. Industry 4.0 was coined back in 2011 and actually describes what we're in now, and that is the digital transformation era. The Fourth Industrial Revolution is much, much more. It's much more substantive, and it's much more involved in everything we do. So one of the big things that we did in the study is we asked the question, were our audience, and it's actually, this last study was 12,854 people, and we asked, were you ready for digital transformation? And there's very, very scary results. Only 27% of reinventors are actually ready of those 12,854 CXOs in the market today. 37% of practitioners, they're kind of just getting there, they're working it all out, they know where they're going. But if you're in that final sort of stage of the aspirationals, you've got a real problem, because that equates to something in the region of 2 years to get there and 5 years behind by the time you get there. So we need to embrace this change. We need to understand what this thing is and how we can actually harness it. But if those 27% are right, and of course our statistics say they are, then we need to really start to think differently. So I've just chosen 3 little subjects, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you what it's in now and what it's going to be in the future. So there's 3 things that we need to weave into our DNA fabric, everything we do. We need to think about things like data, artificial intelligence, and immersive security as part of our everyday business. It needs to be like the electricity flowing through everything. Dubai government should be commended with the first minutes of AI, right? Really in the forefront of changing and recognizing that you need pervasive AI within your whole organization and throughout the culture of society. But let's just take the data, or just one point on that. By default, AI, and I think this is also a thing that the industry have actually come up with, which actually says it's artificial intelligence. By default, that means the machine. But actually, it should be about augmented intelligence. It's about how a machine can help humanity, not replace us. So this is a very important point. I also maybe think that the Minister for AI should maybe be the Minister for AI and Data, because they're inextricably linked and they flow through everything. So when you look at the data, only 20% of the world's data today is searchable. 80% is unstructured. Only 4% is encrypted. And if we go headlong into this Fourth Industrial Revolution, we have a serious problem ahead of us. And that's why all of the security and the artificial intelligence is very, very important. When you think about AI, I believe the statistics are Dubai's GDP is going to be around 15% of GDP from artificial intelligence or augmented intelligence in the next 10 years. Need to validate that, but even if it's really close to that, it means a societal change, and that's why really the Minister for AI is so important. Immersive security. So this is a scary area because 60% of the crime for the next 10 years is forecast to be cybercrime. Which begs the question, what are our police force going to look like? Is Tom Cruise's film, you know, about the whole, I think, what's it called? I've forgotten now.
Minority Report.
Thank you. About sort of predictive crime, I think there's an element coming associated with that. I think we really need to start thinking. So we need to embrace the whole culture of change within everything we do. And if you haven't addressed all of these points, and you're in the aspirational sector, be aware. So, I'm just making sure I'm all right for timing, because I haven't got a lot. Okay, cool. So, if this is Industry 4.0, and these are the three things that are... Brilliant, thank you very much. These are the three things, I thought it was going to go there. These are the three things that we can think. How does it start to transpire? What is it going to become? So I've given you three examples. Quick show of hands. Anybody heard of the term neuromorphic computing? Mohammed and I actually had the pleasure of going to our Zurich labs a month ago. And believe me, our eyes were opened. It was quite phenomenal what we're doing in terms of new technology and where it's going. But neuromorphic technology is about neural networks. It's about bringing the whole thing together. There is billions of dollars. I won't mention the names of the companies, but along with IBM as well, there's about 7 to 10 billion going into just this area alone. So what these are, just to give you a sense, remember we talked about these three things? This is, if you like, the artificial intelligence bit. I don't know why I'm just flickering, but anyway. So what they've managed to do, these scientists, is to build these neuromorphic chips, all inspired by nature. Am I touching anything? Am I good? Okay. All inspired by nature. Actually, interesting enough, they're analog, not digital. But what they're actually doing is mirroring the synapses of the human brain. This takes AI to a completely new level. They actually have these nodes within the chips, and the synapses connectivity grows. That's illustrated in my little blue dot in the drawing. And these synapses grow and learn independently. They connect, and they start to think about where the whole technology is going and what you can do with it. You start to overlay things like the software, and a bit little techie, the software layer of this, game-changing. Game-changing beyond all recognition. And the other thing, actually, the reason why this is so successful, actually, is because they're highly energy efficient, and that's really going to be quite phenomenal. Who's heard of quantum computing? Only a few? Oh dear. Okay, let me give you a very, very quick, I'll just take that back a moment. No, don't know why that's done that. Anyway, so let me give you a quick lesson in quantum computing. So, whereas normal computers use bits, quantum computing uses qubits. So now imagine a line of ones and zeros across this stage. Go fetch, go fetch, go fetch, right? Lines. Now picture the whole room in 4D with ones and zeros. What quantum computers do is they enable us to program individually on each ones and zeros simultaneously. That's phenomenal. This is the big hammer to crack the big data nut. This 80-20 of unstructured and structured data. For World Economic Forum say that that's going to actually go to $1 trillion of personal data in the next 2 years. We have to crack that nut. So, now I'll get back to my quantum. Today, it's available. So if you think this is future, it's not. It's reality today. 5, 16, and 20 qubits are available by IBM. You can download and get into the web and do those. But the inflection point is 50 qubits. So imagine you have 1, you've got 2 equals 4, 3 equals 8. and so on and so on and so on. You get the mathematical calculation, which is endless. But look at this. So 50-qubit machine, and by the way, we're actually looking and experimenting with a 50-qubit machine, represents more than 1 quadrillion values simultaneously. This is scary stuff, right? And when you start to get to 100 qubit, it's squared. So we have got a monumental change coming that we need to be aware of, and we need to grasp it now. This is about 5 years, 6 years, depending on who's actually saying it, away from becoming commercialized, right? But the reality is, we need to start to think about our education right now. So how does that affect the next stage? A couple of other new words for you. Post-quantum cryptography and homomorphic encryption. You can only come from IT, right? But these are scientists that have started to think about the way these things are working. But there's a double-edged sword. With the capability of quantum computing, you can break every single 6-digit PIN code globally in seconds. Right? So we need to think very, very carefully about how we structure it. Why? Because quantum doesn't need to go through the application, it goes straight to the algorithm. So security is going to be a very, very important part of our everyday lives, and the integrity and looking after that data as well. It's a double-edged sword. So whilst if quantum computing gets into the wrong hands, which it will, how are we actually also going to make sure that we can secure things effectively? So when you actually consider where that is actually going, what IBM have done is started to build homomorphic encryption. That is to say that we are building security on the algorithm itself. Right? So this is all kind of quite crazy sciencey stuff and a bit beyond my capability, I must confess. But the important thing is that we're aware of the change. We're aware of what's going to happen. We're aware of the impact on the fourth industrial revolution that all of this is going to happen. There is also the societal impact. 66% of the jobs for the next 10 years have not yet been invented. Which begs the question, what are we educating our children on and to do what? Right? So we have got again, this impact of this fourth industrial revolution, the way change and the way we're going to start to manipulate, needs to start to think we need to educate right now. Quantum computing, 5 years, we need to be starting to teach quantum computing and deep learning at 11-year-olds today. If we're not, we've got a problem. We need to go through exponential learning to recognize the change that is coming as well. And obviously when you think about the impact on the economy, and I go back to my point about artificial intelligence or artificial learning, as it is, we need to also think very, very carefully about how we position ourselves within society and what our role is. It is not about man or machine. It's about man and machine working together and to really start to embrace the whole fourth industrial revolution in a positive way. So I've only got 1 minute. I'm amazed I've actually on time there. So ladies and gentlemen, the future is now. I've only given you a little sort of taster, those different elements of the way data, AI and security are going to affect our lives. There's a lot more I could talk about, but I don't have the time. But the future is now. Please embrace it. What DED are doing is phenomenal. Really starting to build the economy in a structured way, thinking about the impact of that. And I really hope you've enjoyed what I've had to say, and at least it'll start to think a little bit. So, on that note, thank you very much. I've got 20 seconds. Thank you.